Somehow we've made it to generation 3 and you're born. We know you were born in Seattle, you moved to Santa Monica, and then you moved to Edmonton, Alberta until you were about 9 years old. This was the time of World War II. What was it like? Were you aware of the war?
Yeah, there was rationing in Canada. Dad was working on the Alaskan Highway with an engineering company, so he was gone the majority of the time, and we experienced, my mom and I experienced a lot of hardships because of the fierce weather in the winter.
And was there any fun? Was there any upside to all this? Not a lot?
Not a great deal of upside when you live in Canada. One of the upsides is you get a lot of ice skating in the winter and lots of snowball opportunities. And for that short summer season, they do love baseball. And
So you started baseball?
I think that's where I started baseball, but more importantly, that's where I learned to be a fairly decent skater, and I brought that hobby with me back to Cleveland where I ended up using it.
Okay. Okay, your 10 years in Cleveland, from everything I know, seem like the ideal junior high and high school experience in America at its greatest time. What was it like to come back to America, junior high, high school? Was it as ideal as it seems to me?
Everything worked pretty smooth. I was telling Jared earlier today, penmanship wasn't taught in Canada to a very late, maybe high school age. So I was a printer as opposed to writing when I arrived, and that set me back about 6 months in school because they print in Canada, and I wasn't capable of keeping up with the penmanship classes. Other than that, I went to junior high and high school in Cleveland.
A million friends.
A million friends, and every ethnic group you could ever want in your high school. So I grew up, figuring the whole world was made out of
a mixed bag.
Mixed bag.
And Dad was Cub Scout leader?
Dad was Cub Scout leader, very active in fundraising and athletic fundraising at my high school. And
so he was on the scene.
He was on the scene.
As much as he could be.
As much as he could be. And he worked in downtown Cleveland for that J. Gordon Turnbull Company. And a cute story was, real brief story, was that I made some extra money by working in the summer times at the Cleveland Indians baseball stadium, which was on the lake. And one day while I was peddling hot dogs, which was my job, my dad and his business partners were at the ball game, and I had no idea they were there and stumbled upon them. So that was a fun happening that we had in Cleveland. And then in January of '55, you graduate in Cleveland in January or June, 50-50. That's the way it works in the Midwest.
Split semesters.
And I graduated in '55, and then we started heading west.
Well, I just want to say a couple of things. Your penmanship obviously didn't hold you back because you graduated from high school with honors. I know you had a full ride scholarship to Stanford via the Air Force, and it didn't work out for whatever physical, but you ended up going there. You did all right, and you had all the sports and everything I could think of. To me, it sounds like it was pretty magical.
Wonderful time moving to California and going up to Palo Alto.
Okay, so you started Stanford in 1955, and the stories are legion. And I'm just going to read this one headline here. Stanford oust Animal House. And so here you are, third generation Zate, and could you kind of speak to this?
Yeah, we had various and sundry problems with the law at Stanford University, and boys will be boys, and eventually they got tired of it, and so they asked us to take a break from being part of the campus affairs, and so that happened actually in '81. So we had a few penalties our own, and they kept continuing, and so in '81 they said no thank you anymore to the Zate House.
But all those brothers, all those Zate brothers have remained lifelong friends.
Yeah, we had a very, very tight-knit group.
Okay, you went directly from Stanford to IBM and into a career in the early computer business. And that path ultimately resulted in the formation of Forsyth MacArthur. You, right out of Stanford, married Susie Wheeler, and you got the birth of Mike and the birth of Pat. And from my perspective, it seemed like it was a very exciting time.
Yeah, it was great. We bought our first home in Mill Valley, and probably, well, I guess we got married in '63, so we probably bought our first home in Mill Valley in '66 or '67 after we came back from Portland, Oregon, where I worked for IBM and MAI Corporation. And then Michael was born in '67, and we purchased a second home in 1970 in Tiburon, just across the road from Mill Valley.
You took the ferry to work.
I took the ferry to work. And Pat was born in '70 in the same hospital in Corte Madera that Mike was born in. And then shortly thereafter, Jared was born in '73. And you
Yeah,
can
6 months after Pat. And
71.
71.
Pat was 70.
Pat was
I was
70.
1 year
Jared
after
was
Pat.
71.
Okay,
They're almost the same age.
they are.
Yeah.
They were totally lumped together there. So, okay, but you get to Chicago.
Moved to Chicago in '72. And Rick Forsyth and I put together a equipment leasing company,
Computer-based.
computer-based. And we built it from scratch to a pretty nice sized company. And my 10 years in Chicago was highlighted by the
10
fact that I
years.
never owned a car. And lived downtown, worked downtown.
1212.
1212 and 1100 Lakeshore Drive were our two residences, and Vivian and I got married back there and had two more children at Northwestern Hospital in Chicago,
Max and Pete.
Max and Pete.
Okay, so post MacArthur Forsyth, your life became what appears to be pretty glamorous. There were the Thoroughbreds, Del Mar, your marriage to Vivian. How did that happen? How'd you find the horses, and how did all that happen?
Well, a bunch of guys in Chicago got invested and involved with horses from a standpoint of breeding in Kentucky. And so we made some token investments as a group, and it kind of grew. More people got interested into it, and we finally decided to do that full time. Vivian and I decided. So we were going to move to Kentucky on our way to California. We didn't stay too long in Kentucky, but we ended up with being in the horse business for 3 or 4 years. It was very exciting. It was very dynamic. It wasn't a good economic business decision because that industry is not typically a good place to have your primary source of income tied up in. But we had a wonderful time for 3 or 4 years, and then I went back into the computer business.
Somewhere in that time, there was a trip around the world on a sailboat. Were Max and Pete born yet? Were all 4 boys there, or this was just a little break, or was it part of the horse racing era?
Peter was born in '82. Max was born in '79. It was after Peter was born, and then Vivian and I had friends called Sam and Francesca Renborg, and they had planned a 1.5 or 2 year round the world trip, and we joined them several times for several episodes to see parts of the world with them on their yacht. A lot of
That
fun.
was pretty
Yeah, that was fun.
glamorous. Okay, a wonderful thing happened in 1987. You married the beautiful and well-grounded Michelle Monk